So what do? We lean upon Jesus. He is our salvation. He is our peace. He is the one that actually changes us from the inside out. He is the one who fills us with his love and grace and mercy. And so let's lean upon him. Let's lean upon him. Life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Gibbs Rule number 23, never mess with a Marine's coffee if you want to live. Never go against a Sicilian when death is on the line. And of course, so my guess is that all of us have in our brains someplace these kind of quotable quotes that have gotten handed down to us from some influential person in our life, right? We've got these quotes that are in our brains that we got from mom, we got from dad, we got from a grandparent, we got from an influential teacher or a coach that's been in our life someplace. We've got these strange and even annoying lines that are meme-worthy, that are in our heads, that have just gotten stuck into our cranium, right? They've gotten stuck into our consciousness. And every now and then, when the appropriate time comes, we pull those babies out and we invoke these quotable quotes, these lines, based upon if they apply at this moment, right? So, for instance, one of those lines that stick out to me when I was working on this message was my grandfather's line. My mom's dad, Julian Anderson, who is a Lutheran pastor who served congregations up in Minnesota and down in Florida, he had one of these all-purpose lines that went like this: "A fool and his fill-in-the-blank are soon parted." Now, what makes this an all-purpose line is my grandfather used to pull this baby out all the time based upon whatever was going on in our lives. So, for instance, when one of my older brothers had his bike stolen because he forgot to lock it up with a chain and a lock, "A fool and his bike are soon parted," right? My family was down in Florida visiting my grandparents at some point in time when we were real little, and there was a 7-Eleven right around the corner from them. So we would go down to the 7-Eleven all the time, get Slurpees and get all kinds of other stuff. But somebody, not remembering who, but somebody may have left their allowance on the counter and then gone to get a Slurpee and then come back and the allowance was gone. A fool and his money are soon parted, right? Okay. Now, what you did not want to offer my grandfather the latest object to fill in the blank, right? Nobody wanted to be the person who gave my grandfather the latest rendition of "A fool and his whatever are soon parted," right? So you did everything that you could to not be called out by my grandfather in that way, all right? So we all have those kinds of lines in our heads, right? Those kind of quotable quotes, those kind of lessons that we have in our life. But there's three things about these quotable quotes that are really important for us to understand. First is that they're memorable, right? They are specifically designed to stick into our brains like gum on the bottom of a chair, right? Second is that they are uncommon. These lines give little known, little recognized, little practiced pieces of wisdom that are oftentimes hidden about how life really, really works, right? And then third is that they're transferable. Not only are they designed for us to learn and to internalize ourselves, but they're also meant for us to share and to teach with others, right? So just to recap, the three things about those things is that they are memorable, they're uncommon, and they're transferable, right? Got it? So Jesus in the Gospels, all throughout the Gospels, and particularly in the Gospel of Mark, has all kinds of these little quotable quotes that are memorable and uncommon and transferable, right? And he shares these kinds of things with us from the book of Mark, right? Everything is possible for the one who believes. Everyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all. Whoever is not against us is for us. The one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And from today's lesson, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. All right? Remember, they are memorable, they are uncommon, they are transferable. Right? Got it? So, as we think about today's lesson, today is the first part of Jesus' words of wisdom that we're going to be looking at for the next 13 weeks. We're going to be going through the Gospel of Mark together and pulling out these kinds of uncommon, memorable, transferable, quotable quotes, right? These words of wisdom that Jesus shares with his disciples and he shares with us. Not only that we hear them and internalize them, but that we also live by them and share them with others. And as we do this, what we're going to discover is not only that Jesus' words of wisdom are uncommon, that they're really kind of upside down from our normal experiences and normal understanding about life, but Jesus is also going to push these things to the place where they become almost radical, right? For example, today's lesson, when he says these words, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them, right? Go ahead, go with that next one, right? Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. We live in a world today that is obsessed with appearances, right? That is obsessed with looking good. With our clothes, our cars, our houses, our physique. But not just physical, material things, but it's also in relationships, right? We have to look good, we are told. Our families have to look good, we are told. Everything about us has got to look good, we are told. Our appearances has got to be top-notch, above everything else, right? That's what we were told. Because you see, if we look good, then we are good. That's what we're told, right? Well, the same thing was true in Jesus' day and age when there are strict rules of conduct and social conventions that dictated everything about everything in life, right? Don't go to Samaria or you will be unclean. You will be defiled. Do not touch a corpse or a woman who is menstruating or any Gentile or you will be defiled and unclean. Do not walk more than 3/4 of a mile on the Sabbath, or else you will be defiled and unclean. Do not touch a pigskin, or you'll be defiled or unclean. Sorry, football fans. Okay? Wash your hands before you eat, or else you will be defiled or unclean. These were the words that were so often heard and talked about and taught during Jesus' day and age, that were obsessed with external experiences. Because you got to understand, when you look good, then you are good. That's what we were told. That's what people have said during Jesus' day and age. So today we're going to look at Mark chapter 7. If you've got a Bible with you, go ahead and pull out your Bible and take a look at Mark chapter 7. Again, it's okay to bring a Bible with you, folks. Or just pull it up on your phone with an app or whatever, right? And we're going to be taking a look at a couple of passages from Mark chapter 7. We're going to begin with verse 1. All right, so let's take a look at Mark chapter 7, verse 1. The Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus and saw some of his disciples eating food with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. Now go down to verse 5. So the Pharisees and teachers of the law asked Jesus, "Why don't your disciples live according to the tradition of the elders instead of eating their food with defiled hands?" Now let me stop right here because there's a thing that we need to understand about the Pharisees. The Pharisees were a strict and ultra-conservative Jewish sect that had a very narrow and extreme understanding about the Old Testament laws, about the Hebrew laws, right? And not only that, but they were also a group who connected national and political security with spiritual purity. They connected national and political security with spiritual purity. And this comes right out of their interpretation about what happened in Israel's history. Because they look back at Israel's history and they saw that any time that Israel got in trouble with their neighbors, any time that there was problems with the Assyrians or the Babylonians or the Greeks or whatever, it was directly tied to the fact that the people of Israel were not being faithful and devoted to their God. And to be sure, the Hebrew Scriptures talk that way, okay? So we can't completely blame them. However, what they did was they said, okay, in order for us to not get in trouble with God in the future, in order for us to protect our national and political security, what we need to do is we need to dictate and legislate spiritual purity. And so when they get on Jesus in Mark chapter 7 about his disciples not washing their hands before they eat, it's not just about hygiene. They're not just upset about, you better wash your hands before dinner, right? What they're upset about is that Jesus' disciples are not following the conventional religious rules and rituals that are directly connected to spiritual purity. And because they're not doing that, then God is going to eventually punish them. Got it? That's what's going on. And so, how does Jesus respond to what they're saying, to their accusation? We'll go down and look at verse 18. Mark chapter 7, verse 18. Are you so dull? He starts off, which is great. He says, don't you see that nothing that enters a person from the outside can defile them? And then down to verse 20. What comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come: sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person. You see, the Pharisees were obsessed with the externals, with how things looked. And they thought that what their job was to mandate and to regulate and to legislate spiritual purity. And if they did that, then everything was okay. But what Jesus is saying in this text is that he's concerned with something else much more significant. He's concerned with the heart. Because you see, Jesus knows that, listen, you could do all of the ceremonial and religious and ritualistic things. You can check all of those boxes all day long and still have a heart that is very, very, very far from God. People that are in recovery will tell you this, that the first major roadblock to recovery, the first major roadblock that people need to push through in order to go onto the road to recovery, is the roadblock of denial, right? The roadblock of keeping up appearances for everybody else. The roadblock of, I want to look good. I want our family to look good. I want us to have the right appearances. I want people to think that I'm okay. And so let's convince everybody that I'm okay, that my family's okay, that my internal life is okay, that my hidden space is okay, right? Let's just go ahead and convince everybody that I'm okay, because when I'm good, right, when the externals look good, then I am good. That's kind of the facade. That's the lie about what's going on. But meanwhile, the internal stuff is a mess. The internal life, the family life, the emotional life is anything but good. And here's where we realize that looks actually can be deceiving, right? That the cover on the book is lying to you. That acceptance, admitting that I'm really not okay, really is the first step to recovery and to healing. Look at this list again. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. Does that sound familiar? Here's the reality. We all have this stuff. Right here. Every one of us has it right here in our hearts. Boy, we can dress it up. We can try and make it look good. We can try and deny it's there. We can try and pretend like nobody else can see it and all that kind of stuff. But guess what? It's right there. And we can try and legislate it. We can try and dictate. We can try and put pressure on people so that that stuff doesn't come out. But it's still right there. And Jesus knows it. So what does Jesus tell us in this first words of wisdom? What is he telling us about what's going on with evil being in our hearts? Well, there's three things I think we can learn from this lesson today. First is this: no more faking, right? No more lying, no more being so obsessed with the externals, with appearance, that we just fake stuff to people, right? Let's just be honest and admit it. We all have evil in our hearts. We do. And again, we can try and dress it up and make it look pretty, but it's still there. Second, the natural response to evil is dictate, mandate, legislate, put pressure on people. Tell them don't do that. But the problem is this never works, right? You know what this is like, right? What is the first thing that happens when you say don't do that? When you say don't touch that, what is the first thing that's going to happen? You're going to touch it, right? You can't legislate this stuff. You can't dictate it. You can't put pressure on people and tell them not to do that. Why? Because evil is still a thing. Evil is within all of us, and we're going to always do exactly the thing that we're told not to do. Right? I don't want to pick on my son Aaron, but man, he was a pro at this, right? Jeez. I mean, and he, to this day, he'll admit, man, growing up, when somebody told me not to do something, that was the first thing I was going to do, right? And we're all there. Why? Because we got evil inside of us, right? We got evil inside of us. C.S. Lewis says this. There's a great quote that I love from him. He said, "Human history is the long, terrible story of man trying to find something else other than God which will make him happy." Now, it's a great quote. I'm going to change it up a little bit and put it this way. Human history is the long, terrible story of man trying to find ways to control the heart. Human history is the long and terrible story of man trying to find ways to control the heart. And it's never happened. It's never happened. So that's the second thing, is the natural response is trying to legislate, put pressure on this stuff so it goes away. The third thing is this. So what is the most effective response to evil in our lives? It's Jesus. The most effective response to evil in our lives is Jesus. His life, His death, His resurrection, His love, His grace, His forgiveness, His mercy, His peace, His joy, His power, His promises, His gifts that He brings to each one of us here today in this bread and in this wine. His word that He shares with us, His Spirit that He gives to us, His faith that He brings to life within each one of us, His promises that we lean upon about life here in this place and life eternal. What is the most natural response? No, not the most natural, the most effective response to evil in our lives? It's Jesus. And we lean upon Him. We follow Him. We listen to Him. We trust Him, because nothing else in all of creation will be able to satisfy the evil that is in within our hearts. Nothing else but Jesus is the answer. So I learned a long time ago to not be surprised when evil just pops up someplace. Because it's gonna. Why? Because evil resides right here within every one of us. So how do we deal with that? Well, legislating it. Listen, laws are good, policies are good. I understand that for good and common evil. I'm not saying that we don't pass stuff, right? We pass stuff. We try to make the society as best we can, but you can't legislate the heart. So what do? We lean upon Jesus. He is our salvation. He is our peace. He is the one that actually changes us from the inside out. He is the one who fills us with His love and grace and mercy. And so let's lean upon Him. Let's lean upon Him. And over these next 13 weeks, as we go through Jesus' words of wisdom, we are going to see Jesus again speak to us in ways that are memorable, in ways that are uncommon, in ways that are transferable. Yeah. And so as we hear Jesus' words of wisdom, let's not just be hearers of them.
When I'm heading
but let's be doers of them as well. May God grant this to us for Jesus.